I speak to you in the name of love. In the name of love, we come, we go. Peace.
So, there'll be some clipboards passing around at some point this evening that invite you to sign up to get more information about BAM CDC, to find out about how to help with BAM Fest, a huge festival that's coming up in the middle of Black August to celebrate the Black Arts Movement here in Oakland. So, once again, welcome to the BAM. The program, and we're going to go straight into introductions to get us back on schedule, so I get to stay some more. I get the great pleasure of introducing El Muhajir, Marvin Jackman, Marvin X. I could have read you the bio of AmiriBaraka.com. He was born in Fowler, little city near Fresno, 1944. He's a prolific writer. You heard Greg Bridges say that he's written over 30 books. It might interest you to know at least 20 of them have been in the last decade. He is a magnetic speaker. He has mentored many, many people, and some of those people he led the water and they drank. Might be a few thirsty horses around here. He's a Gemini, so there are two of him. How well you like him may depend on which one you met first.
That's right.
The man is an intellectual genius.
Yes.
And he is an accessible genius. He has an academy on the corner of 14th and Broadway, and he sets up church there whenever he gets ready to.
Lakeshore Avenue.
Somewhat like Socrates, just sitting out and handing out knowledge to anybody willing to engage. Marvin X has introduced me to some of the greatest minds, some of the most mind-blowing freedom fighters, living and dead, that this room can imagine. I've had the pleasure of meeting Dr. West before. That's a rock star, y'all. When I was getting my graduate degree, I said, I want to grow up and be like Cornel West. Other rock stars like Nathan Hare.
That's right.
Julia Hare.
That's right.
I've met artists like Sonia Sanchez,
That's right.
Nikki Giovanni, Ishmael Reed, Sam Greenlee, Donnell Lee. Maybe most notably, Marvin's most significant partner in crime, AmiriBaraka. The two of them are especially significant when said in one breath, because we envision the foundation of the Black Arts Movement. A movement that I'll tell you on paper ended in 1970. Well, I was raised by lions, so I get to drop science on you. You never let your oppressor tell you when your movement's in. I created the continuum of the Black Arts Movement. I see others in the room that do as well. So it actually never ended. Maybe it just buried itself a little bit more deeply underground, because it is the sister to the Black Power movement. And perhaps it's merely sleeping, waiting for a pregnant time, like right about now, to be joined by the power that it needs to walk in a room. It's very popular now to say that Black lives matter. Black power matters. Because if you got power, you ain't got to tell nobody your life matters.
That's right. That's right.
I was raised by lions, Marvin X. Marvin X has mentored me. He's counseled me. You can cuss me out. He's prayed for me. He's prayed with me. One of my favorite little anecdotes about him is his mother was a wonderful woman, very, very wise, very socially forward, who loved her son and told him how brilliant he was, how he was a giant amongst men, but he had one fatal flaw. He just wouldn't leave them niggas alone. And I personally am extremely grateful that on that note, that he didn't listen to his mother. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with the greatest pleasure that I can possibly muster that I introduce my mentor, El Muhajir, Marvin X. Stand up!
Lord, these are going to be black minutes. I don't know what kind of minutes you got, but I got some black minutes here. So I'm going to begin by just saying I'm blessed to be here. I salute each and every one of you for being here. I want to thank Sister Kat, Sister Ayo, and Brother James for those wonderful words. And I want to take a little time to say something about my brother Marvin X. Because I love this brother. He has enriched my life. He has empowered my sense of what it is to be a human being and what it is to be a freedom fighter. He's a love warrior, not just a polished professional. Sacrifice. Up, down, still consistent. And when he called me to be here, and it was months ago now.
Yes, sir.
And he'd been working on it. And I hear from him every night. Every night.
Everybody does.
In the midnight hour. And his midnight hour in Oakland is 3 o'clock in the morning for me on the East Coast. And I'm still up reading. I say, there go Marvin X again. And I called my brother Cliff. I said, yeah, I got it too, brother. But that's the kind of dedication. That's the kind of devotion. That's the kind of commitment. That's the kind of conviction he has. He has a love for those Sly Stone called everyday people. That's very rare these days among the older generation. Now, the younger generation got a hunger and thirst. But the older generations become so obsessed with things and commodities and status and position, they become so well adjusted to injustice that they no longer have the focus on those James Cleveland called ordinary people. So that's why he is the African Socrates on the block. See, he's deeper than Socrates because Socrates never cried. He never shed a tear. And anybody who's never cried and shed a tear never loved anybody.
That's right.
You can love wisdom. You can love abstract principles. I love Socrates' intellectual honesty, but it's not just intellectual honesty that's going to allow you to empower others. You got to learn how to cry.
That's right.
You got to learn how to shed a tear. You're going to learn how to empty yourself and donate yourself and give yourself. That's why he is one who on the block confused the tears with the tenacity of fighting. And that's why I'm here, my brother.
Yes.
Everybody's doing fine under the circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of them don't even want to let me over. They're scared.
I know what you mean.
Your own relatives scared to let you in the house.
Let you in the house. But the thing is, we don't really realize how old we really are. You know, we run around thinking we still 20, 30, 40. They say, no, you're old folk now. You the most vulnerable population.
Yeah.
I say, really? Really?
Right. So we're blessed to be here this morning to have a conversation in about 30 minutes time we have. And this is in honor of the Black Arts Movement Business District Festival here in Oakland, California.
Okay.
Under the leadership of our dear sister, Dr. Ayodele Nzinga, that you remember from our conversation in December.
Right.
She was,
right.
she introduced me, and she's one of my star students. Let's make it simple.
Yeah, that's
I
nice.
know we got a lot of students, and I know you got some stars. Hey, and some 8 stars.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's all right, but that's true.
So we're gonna just chop it up for a minute or 2 or
Sure
3. As you said in December, Black Minutes, of course.
Black men.
Yeah. I just want to make sure
Lord.
this thing is recording. I guess it is. Says it is. So, where can we begin?
Lord, brother, let us start at the highest moment, which is your life, witness, and work from Fowler outside of Fresno to Oak Town outside of Frisco, Marvin X, the genius and giant that he is. That's where we begin.
We got to flip it this time, Cornell. You got to get off of me. Let's talk about Sapp and you. Now they both in the valley. We both from the Central Valley.
That's true.
So we need to give a little praise out to the valley. They need a little praise. They down in the valley of the shadow of death. Seems like sometimes.
That's true.
So,
No, with Sacramento and Fresno get overlooked because of East Bay, Oakland, San Francisco, Albany, and Berkeley too. You know what I mean?
yes.
You're absolutely right.
Yes.
But no, I love Sac though, man. Glen Ellen, Shiloh Baptist Church, and the nightclubs on Friday.
Yes.
The Motown, man, I wouldn't have survived. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have survived, man.
Now I wanna jump really back into history.
Yeah.
We got some streets here in Oakland, which you probably know. In North Oakland, we got the 30s, 31st, 30th, on down, and they used to call them sometimes people used to call them the dirty 30s. Dirty 30s. But using this metaphor, I've been thinking about what happened around the 1830s, 1829 and 1827.
Ooh.
Can you go into some of the events that happened in particular? David Walker's Appeal, 1829, then Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, and Denmark Vesey. And some of these brothers, of course, come out of your Christian tradition.
That's right.
Not that I ain't got Christianity in me. We got it in us.
Oh, yeah.
We got it. So anyway, what do you think about that time period in Black history?
Well, I think it's a historic moment. It's pivotal because for the first time, when you had Maria Evans already standing up, she was directly connected to David Walker, who published that historic appeal that appealed to colored citizens of the world, and in particular, those in the United States. So from the very beginning, you had the emergence of a visionary, courageous set of Black voices grounded in the local, but having a global perspective. And it was in the face of a white supremacy that they understood to be global as well. And it was fundamentally a matter of trying to speak to the material poverty and subjugation and the spiritual poverty and capitulation. So you had the connection always of our material situation, healthcare, jobs, housing, and so forth, but always a spiritual dimension, which had to do with self-respect, self-regard, self-confidence, self-affirmation. And so from the very beginning, you could already see the ways in which we were a profoundly spiritual people who, when empowered, could fight collectively and individually against evils. Now, we should also note, just 5 years later, Henry Howard Garnett, standing on one leg,
Yes.
stood up at the National Civic Convention, and what did he say? Black people, don't confuse your situation with that of the Israelites of the Old Testament. For us, Pharaoh was on both sides of the bloody Red Sea.
That's right.
That's
right.
heavy.
That's right.
That's serious, brother.
Yes.
Somebody hollered in the corner. Could somebody sing a song, please?
Yes. Yes.
We're going to need some spirituality to deal with this double Pharaoh everywhere we look. Sometimes the Pharaoh's in black skin. Usually it's in white skin. It could even be in brown and indigenous people's skin. When indigenous brothers and sisters sided with the Confederacy, people don't like talking about that.
Yeah.
We in deep solidarity with their struggle. But Pharaoh comes in a lot of different colors, and the Pharaoh inside of us,
Yes.
in our own souls. How do you extricate it to deal with this civil war taking place on the battlefield of our own hearts so that we can actually accent the best of who we are?
I want to ask you about another brother, since you mentioned David Walker and his appeal to the colored citizens of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Let's jump ahead to a brother that you maybe can explain for a lot of people who don't know about him. Edward Wilmot Blyden.
Oh, yeah.
What can you tell us about Edward Wilmot Blyden and his classic work, what? Christianity, Islam, and the Negro Race? I think that's
That's right.
Tell us something about Blyden.
I mean, he's one of the great public intellectuals and scholars who
Of the
was
19th century.
after the middle part of the 19th century, who was already again making the global connections
Yes.
and trying to muster what sources for Black self-affirmation in the religious form.
Yeah.
The best of Christianity, the best of Islam, and its relation to, at that time, an already colonized Africa, in the sense of here, the beginning of human civilization.
Yeah.
A history of tremendous breakthroughs culturally, institutionally, politically, and so forth, now being not just marginalized, but demonized and dishonored and devalued. So here he emerges as a scholar.
Yes.
And this is very important,
Right.
because, of course, this is at a moment in which what? It's against the law for Black people to learn how to read and write.
Right. Right.
Which means that almost 90% of our precious brothers and sisters, their genius and talent and wisdom will be filtered in non-literate form,
Yes.
in music,
Right.
in expressions, in stylizations of their body, in space and time. Here he's a scholar trying to make sense of all of that. So that there's a sense in which he, like David Walker, they're trying to use the gifts that they have
Yes.
to be of service to a hated people who are going to produce so much love in the modern world for everybody.
Great. Now, Ron, you spent a lot of time talking about Du Bois. You've written books on him. How do you summarize his relationship with Booker T. Washington?
As you know, it's a complicated one, though, brother. It's a complicated one, and I think of you asking the question, because you think in terms of your own formation, brother. You got the Black Panther Party introduction, brother Elridge Cleaver, two, Huey Newton, two, brother Huey and brother Bobby. At the same time, you got the Black church backdrop in Fresno. At the same time, you're an artist.
Yes.
You were playwright.
Yes.
What was that? What was that first play? Was it Flowers for the Trash Man?
That's it. That's it.
How old were you, brother?
Well, I was about 20.
20.
I was an undergrad at San Francisco State.
Exactly, getting your BA and MA.
Yes.
So you open to your jazz like. You're pulling from all of these different figures, traditions, in order to try to make sense of our Black situation. You're coming out of an activist family, so in that sense, you're much further along. Was it the Fresno Voice? Was your family already?
My parents published a newspaper. And,
Putting out the
I'm
newspaper.
looking at myself right now at this moment, getting ready to bring out my newspaper. And I think about it all the time. Am I really doing something new? How can I be doing something new when my parents were doing this when I came out the womb? They had the Black newspaper in Fresno.
No, it's real. I mean, it's different circumstances and conditions,
But
it's
I want
different
to say,
ideological projections, but it's the same tradition that's renewing itself over time in distinctive forms relative to where we are. That's a beautiful thing. And I say all that in relation.
And it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing. That's right. That's right. Well, James Baldwin says beautiful and terrible.
That's right. But back to Booker T.
But back to Du Bois. But
let me say this about my grandmother. I just have to say this.
Oh, yeah.
When I used to go to my grandmother's house in Fresno, I used to go through her old trunk, and she had to tell me, stop progging, boy. Progging in my stuff. But I always used to go down there when we was in Oakland and we go back to Fresno. I wanted to find one book. Probably the only book she had in her house was Up From Slavery.
Interesting.
Up From Slavery. That's the only book she had in her house. I recall. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, but I was going through you to get to Du Bois. But I should also just drop Audrey McDonald coming out of Fresno. She's probably the greatest Broadway artist that we have. So you got you and Audrey together.
Well, you got Shirley Ann Williams too.
Ooh,
Shirley Ann Williams.
I forgot that. I'm glad.
Absolutely. We can't forget
true.
my home girl.
Out of Fresno, you absolutely right.
Yes, sir.
One
of our greatest critics.
Because see, when Du Bois first encountered Booker T. Washington, he was sitting in the audience at Sanders Theater at Harvard in 1896. He had just received his PhD, the first black man to get a PhD in the history of Harvard, and Booker T. Washington was receiving an honorary degree.
Okay.
Now, Booker T. Washington is not known at all.
Right.
He's just given his famous speech in 1895 at the exposition in Atlanta,
right,
justifying the ways in which white supremacy was subjugating black folk. And he said we could still be as fingers on a hand.
That's
we
right.
could be separate and still working together, and looked as if this was a capitulation. Keep in mind, the one and only Frederick Douglass had just died in 1895 too.
Yes.
He was the grand national, most public black spokesman. So Du Bois is sitting there in the chair saying, this Negro getting an honorary degree in 1 year, ain't nobody heard of him. I didn't put in 7 years of major labor, both here and in Germany, getting a PhD, and he getting an honorary one.
Yeah.
That's a Keith Sweat moment. Something just ain't right.
Yeah. Yeah.
He got to have a suspicion. But initially, Du Bois himself was willing to go to Tuskegee, had written letters to Booker T. Washington because he knew he was the most prominent black man at that time, which basically meant he had been selected by the white power structure to become the most visible. But Booker T. Washington is going to do some very important things, so I don't want to just trash the brother. He's going to actually build some institutions. Tuskegee's going to have a black president. Howard University wouldn't have that till 1920 with Mordecai Johnson. So that Booker T is going to do some things, but he's getting money. You know, that same year he receives $895,000 in cash from Carnegie.
Right.
And Carnegie tells him to keep 180,000 of it and use the rest of it for the thing. Now, Booker T was a good brother in that personal sense, that he didn't just take that money and use it all.
Yes. Yes.
He wasn't corrupt in that sense. We got too many folk these days who just take all the money.
Right.
All of it. You know, you say, wait a minute now. Save something for your fund for your elderly. Save something for your prison. Save something for your halls and buildings here. Yeah. So that Booker did take a slice, but he took less than what Carnegie told him. So we got to acknowledge that.
Right.
Back to Du Bois. Du Bois is open to a job at Tuskegee initially. So that when you look at the critique that he gives of Booker T. Washington in The Souls of Black Folk in 1903, which is 7 years after he first encounters Booker T. in Sanders Theater at Harvard, receiving an honorary degree, you see, he's already got an ambivalence toward Booker T.
Right.
He's ambiguous in that regard. And even when we read that critique, he's saying over and over again, honest criticism must be integral to ourselves as a people. I recognize your breakthroughs because you are creating institutions. Tuskegee's still around. That ain't no small thing for a hated, haunted people like black people. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Right. Just like your institution building, Black House with the theaters, with Ed Bullins. We can go on everywhere you go. You create institutions, journals. When you on the corner in 14th and Broadway, reenacting what we call the kind of Curtis Mayfield version of Socrates in Athens, because you got soul, you got rhythm, but you got love for the people, but you're asking questions and the young folk coming to you. That's the institution too.
Yes,
so Du Bois is learning from Booker T.
Okay.
Saying, I need to start creating some journals and some institutions with NAACP that he'll do with others just a few years later, you see.
Yeah.
Now, it's true, you know, Booker T will die in 1915. By that time, Du Bois has become radicalized. His Pan-African consciousness is increasing. He's already been now to Pan-African gatherings, and he's already a socialist. So he's critical of capitalism in a way that Booker T will never be critical of. And so you get these two towering figures, but who else is in the mix? Ida B. Wells Barnett.
Right.
She's fighting against the terrorism. She's fighting against the Jim Crow and lynching and so forth with the Red Terror. Who else is in on it? A.A. Bradley. He's coming out of the migration movement of the exodus, trying to get black folk out from under Booker T. Washington's South and the white supremacist South and American apartheid to go to Oklahoma. That's my state. That's where I was born, as you know.
Yes, yes.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. Same hospital as the Wilson brothers from the Gap band. And what does Gap stand for? Greenwood, Archer, Pine. That's Black Wall Street. Oklahoma was founded by A.A. Bradley's exodus coming out of a Negro-hating South, trying to create a territory. Oklahoma, there was an attempt of Oklahoma to create an all-black and red state with Chief Sam. Chief Sam was the model for Marcus Garvey. When Garvey arrives from Jamaica in March of 1916, he's looking for Booker T. Washington and Chief Sam. Yeah. Booker's dead. Chief Sam is gone to Sierra Leone.
Let me ask you about. Let me ask you this about
Oklahoma as a whole black state. That's a black nationalist tradition.
Let me ask you about Booker T. You mentioned Du Bois's Pan-Africanism.
Yes.
You just said Garvey came here looking for Booker T.
Yes,
but
right.
You also know that Booker T. wrote in Deuce Muhammad Ali's newspaper in London, the African Times and Orient Review.
That's true.
That Garvey was connected with. That's probably why he wanted to come and see Booker T.
That's true. You're absolutely right. Booker had an international dimension that I don't want to downplay.
Right.
But it was not a Pan-Africanist one that had a radical critique.
Why was he writing in a Pan-African newspaper?
Well, it was because the Pan-African newspaper recognized that there were prominent black people whose voices was very important, and you invite them in. But we know Booker T is hanging out with Rosenthal and Carnegie and Rockefeller and Hopkins and Leland Stanford Sr. and all of these gangsters, all of these robber barons. And that's where his money's coming from. That's not no Pan-Africanist orientation. That's taking that money and making sure that black folk have some resources. Now, I'm for that now.
Okay.
So, I don't want to trash Booker T in a
well, let's shift from Booker T to Du Bois and Garvey.
Yes.
What can you say about that?
Yeah, well, I tell you, brother, that's another complicated situation. I do, because I have such a deep love for Marcus Garvey, man.
Yeah.
His genius and his...
And you know, this is the 100th anniversary of the flag and the declaration to the Negro people of the world.
1920. Up, you mighty race, you can do what you will.
That's right.
To say. Oh, my God. That's coming right out of St. Anne's Bay. And never went to college, but 2 colleges went through him. Shaped in his father's library. Giving speeches to the mirrors. Being part of the labor movement that got him booted out. He went to Costa Rica. Then he goes to Panama. He's in Central America. He says, everywhere I go? It looks like black folk living lives of ruin and disaster. Where's the black man's army and navy? If not, then I will make one. He is a black nationalist with an international orientation. So when he arrives in the United States, he and Garvey actually had some friendly moments. He is actually introduced by A. Philip Randolph and Chauncey Owens, who was the editor of The Messenger, which was the Black Socialist magazine. So they know that Garvey radical. Garvey's already got a critique of World War I. He knows that it, in fact, is a critique of European empires fighting for third world, Asian, African lands and resources. So they resonate with him. But then the break takes place. Boom. Now, of course, I got love with Du Bois too.
Well, come on with it.
Du Bois, you see, Du Bois is a, you know, he got a lot of petty bourgeois elements given that Harvard education that doesn't allow him to have the kind of organic connection with black folk on the ground in the street. Garvey comes from Jamaica. He goes straight to everyday black people. He goes straight to the brother and sister on the block, and he goes straight to the South. People overlook that about Garvey. Garvey went straight to the southern states. He did a tour of all of the different states, bringing his message of black uplift. The world has made being black a crime. I intend to make it a virtue.
That's right.
See, that's the Garvey. There ought to be a Garvey in all of us.
That's right. That's right.
But the clash takes place. Then there's the colorism, you know, that Garvey looks around and he sees so many light-skinned black folk, and he sees a number of mulatto black folk who are in leadership positions vis-a-vis the white power structure. He says, I know that genius and black genius comes in a number of different forms, including the beautifully black, darker brothers and sisters like myself. Garvey is 120% right. 120% right, but it created deep tensions. Very deep tensions.
That still exists to this day.
And then, of course, you get Du Bois at his worst. As much as I love my brother Du Bois,
come on with
he cooperates with J. Edgar Hoover and what will become the FBI to facilitate the arrest and incarceration of Marcus Garvey. Du Bois ought to be profoundly and always ashamed of that kind of
cooperation. He wasn't by himself. You can call out a few more names if you want to.
Well, you had NAACP, you had Walter White, the whole slew of black middle-class leadership capitulating to the repressive apparatus of the U.S. nation state to ensure the incorporation and the incarnation, and then he left in what was it, 1925 or 27? I forget right now. I think it was Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge, who pardoned him after years in prison. He was in Atlanta. So that you can see the culmination of the enmity and the conflict between these two powerful figures. How sad that they couldn't work together. How sad they couldn't work together. Both of them are towering figures. But you see, part of what has happened is that the white mainstream has always had a profound fear of black nationalist movements. Profound fear of black nationalist movement. That's why, for example, when you look at the COINTELPRO in 1966, there are four figures that they're focusing on. They're focusing on H. Rap Brown, who is now Iman Jamil Abdullah Amin. I just wrote a piece for him. I just had dialogue with his folk. He's still in jail. He's still in prison in Arizona. And he was the one telling black people, no slave ought to die a natural death.
That's right.
That's a cold line.
That's right.
Cold line. Violence American is cherry pie.
Come on.
I say freedom. Give me freedom or death. You demonize me. Patrick Henry say freedom and death. He becomes a hero. George Washington says freedom or death. He becomes a hero. I say exactly the same thing for black people, and I become a criminal, and they have a special thing. But he was one of them. The second one was Elijah Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
The third one was a brother named Max Stanford. You might remember.
Muhammad Ahmad.
That's right. Muhammad Ahmad, absolutely. And the fourth was, they had the Black Panther Party and the others. Who was the fourth one? It was Stokely Carmichael. It was Kwame.
Yeah. Yes.
Those were the four. Now, of those four, all of them had been deeply influenced by Black nationalism, and every one of them was a son of the greatest Black freedom fighter of the 20th century named Malcolm X.
That's right.
All of them sons of Malcolm,
That's
you
right.
see. So that there's no Malcolm without Elijah Muhammad. There's no Elijah Muhammad without Garvey.
That's right. That's
so that
right.
that Black nationalist tradition becomes a tradition that we have to wrestle with. Now, as you know, as a revolutionary Christian, I've never been a Black nationalist.
Yes.
But I can't understand myself without Huey Newton, Marvin X, Malcolm X,
Yes.
Erica Huggins. We can go right across the board.
Right.
These are revolutionary Black nationalists. So that the question becomes, what do we learn from each other? How do we work together from each other? And most importantly, how do we recognize we come out of the same tradition of the greatest people of the 20th century in terms of dealing with catastrophe and dishing out so much creativity and compassion?
That's right. Let me ask you in the few minutes we got left about your book, The Prophetic Tradition.
On Black Prophetic Fight.
Yeah, Prophetic Fire. That's right. What?
Yeah.
Give me a little summary of that.
Well, I dedicate that book to David Walker and Harry Tubman.
No, you didn't.
Oh yeah.
I read some of that. I didn't see that.
Right on the front page.
Look at that. I didn't know you did that to David Walker.
That's how we come out of the blocks, brother. We are Walkerites.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Tubmanites.
That's right.
Oh yes, because
That's
Harry
right.
got that love 19 times. She goes back into the belly of the beast, loving Black people so deep. And sometimes she got her gun because if the slave gets scared, he gonna have to go because he ain't gonna mess it up for everybody else. She does it in the name of Jesus, just like me.
Yeah.
And so is David Walker. We're both of them Christian in the name of Jesus. But we got Black nationalists who are Muslim, Black nationalists who are secular, and so forth.
Right.
But I look at Martin, Malcolm, Douglas, Du Bois, Ella Baker, and Ida B. Wells Barnett as great examples of what it is to live a life of moral and spiritual excellence grounded in the love of Black people and a willingness to do what James Brown did in every concert, which is to empty himself, give himself, donate himself, and recognize he's always an extension of the community that produced him. He doesn't exist without that community, and he's a servant. His genius is a form of service to others. That's the story of your life, Brother Marvin X.
Yes,
a servant to the people. Whatever's inside of you got to get out.
That's right.
Whatever's in there. And sometimes it's some funky stuff in there. Sometimes it's less funky stuff in there.
Jay Brown say, ain't it funky now?
Ain't it funky now? And make it funky, Bobby Bird. I mean, you got to get it out. You giving. At the end of an Al Green concert, the brother can't breathe. Coltrane's blowing his horn so hard that he throws it to the ground, starts beating on his chest in November 1966 at Temple University. Rashid Ali say, Train, what's happening? I'm trying to give to the people, brother. They've given me everything. I want to give them something back. That's our tradition.
I saw Luther Vandross. Everybody that left the concert, he's still singing.
He's still blowing.
Singing. Everybody that left.
Still blowing. Once you know how, you will never. I mean, that's Luther.
Yes, sir.
That's Luther. That's Aretha.
That's right. That's right.
That's the whispers, brother. That's the natural four ritual.
That's right.
That's the dramatics from Detroit. That's the Delphonics from Philadelphia.
We're gonna cut it short here. I know we could go on forever, and hopefully maybe we can do this again soon.
Brother, you know I'm always ever ready on call for you, brother, because I love you and I respect you. You know that.
And it's mutual, brother.